The kitchen smelled of gas and scorched sugar. Celia stood beside the stove, gripping my spare key, while Malcolm Reed bled through his gray shirt on the floor. An officer dragged me into the hallway as another aimed his weapon through the smoke. I kept shouting that Malcolm had broken in. Then the officer held up a red cord cut from my locked bedroom window, a cord tied in two perfect knots. Celia stopped smiling. Why did that knot make Malcolm whisper, "Now you see her"? 22 years earlier, Celia Ward and I had lived 3 houses apart in Bellwether, Ohio. She was the fearless one. I was the girl who rehearsed restaurant orders. At 11, we made forever keys from hardware store blanks and red embroidery cord. Celia always tied hers twice. "Nothing gets lost if it's tied twice," she'd say. We drifted apart after college, until she appeared at my mother's funeral carrying white lilies and that same brass key. Was it strange that she'd kept it? I had just moved to Columbus for a bookkeeping job at Larkin Finch Bakery. My wedding to Daniel was 7 months away, and every spare dollar, 18 ton, 40, sat in one account for the venue. Celia helped unpack, stocked my freezer, and remembered that I hated cinnamon and coffee. Across the hall lived Malcolm, the building superintendent. Broad shoulders, broken nose, few words. When he saw Celia holding my spare key, his eyes stayed on it too long. Why was he studying her hands? Celia became useful so quickly that refusing her felt rude. She collected packages, brought dinner, even learned Daniel's work schedule. One Tuesday, I caught her photographing my paper planner. She laughed and said she was checking which night to book us concert tickets. Malcolm stood halfway down the stairs, pretending to repair a railing. Later, he asked whether Celia lived with me. When I said no, his jaw tightened. "Then change your lock," he said. What did he think he knew? 3 days later, I came home to an unlocked door. Nothing expensive was missing. Someone had moved my desk 6 inches, opened Daniel's letters, and removed one photograph. Celia and me beneath that childhood oak. Damp boot prints crossed the kitchen. Malcolm wore work boots and he possessed a master key. He denied entering, but building footage showed him outside my door at 2:13 that afternoon. Celia squeezed my wrist and said, "I knew he watched you." Why had she sounded relieved? The following week, my mechanic found a clean slice through my brake hose. Tucked beneath the windshield wiper was a card reading, "You should leave before someone makes you." A short piece of red cord pierced one corner. I thought it referred to the cord on my spare key, something Malcolm could have seen. Police searched his utility room and found photographs of my doorway, my car, and Celia entering the building. They also found lockpicks. What innocent man kept a file on me? Malcolm had a burglary conviction from 2009 and no graceful explanation. He claimed the photographs documented unauthorized access, but he had never filed a report. Celia told detectives he'd followed us twice. I remembered his reflection in a cafe window and his truck near Daniel's office. The detective requested a warrant. Meanwhile, management suspended Malcolm and changed my deadbolt. Celia offered to stay over. That night, she placed a chair beneath my doorknob. If Malcolm was locked out, why did I still hear movement? By Friday, 12,400 had vanished from Larkin Finch's payroll account using my credentials. Security logs placed the transfer from my laptop at 1:06 a.m., while Celia and I slept in my apartment. My boss suspended me. Daniel found emails, apparently from me, calling him controlling and planning to cancel our wedding. He left his ring on my counter. Celia arrived within 20 minutes, carrying soup I hadn't requested. She said, "Now nobody can pull us apart." Why did my stomach tighten at the word us? Celia showered while I searched her bag for aspirin. Beneath a canvas pouch, I found folders labeled Daniel, Lark and Finch, and Malcolm. Inside were Daniel's private emails, my payroll password, and a photocopy of Malcolm's conviction. There were 6 duplicate keys wrapped in red cord. At the bottom lay photographs of another woman named Rebecca Sloan, always beside Celia, dated 4 years earlier. The final picture showed Rebecca's burned apartment. Then the bathroom water stopped. How could I leave without Celia seeing what I'd found? Before Celia emerged, glass cracked behind me. Malcolm climbed through the balcony door, one hand raised, blood running from his palm. I grabbed a knife. He told me Celia had copied my key, entered my apartment, and used my laptop. The photographs were surveillance because police had dismissed him when he reported her. Rebecca Sloan had been his sister. She disappeared after accusing Celia of stalking her, and her apartment burned 2 nights later. Then Malcolm placed a tiny brass key on my counter. Where had he found my childhood key? Malcolm had found it beneath Rebecca's floorboards after the fire, threaded with red cord and tied twice. "Nothing gets lost if it's tied twice," he said. My knees struck the cabinet. Every warning had carried Celia's signature, not Malcolm's. His truck had followed us because he was gathering proof. He'd photographed my doorway because Celia entered whenever I left. Even the lockpicks belonged to Rebecca. Malcolm kept them because Celia had planted them once before. Then Celia called from the hallway, asking why my door was open. She stepped inside holding a grocery bag, saw Malcolm, and locked the door. The sweetness vanished from her face. She turned every stove knob, then dropped our childhood photograph into the sink and struck a match. Celia said Daniel had made me smaller, my job had exhausted me, and Malcolm had poisoned me against the only person who stayed. She had dismantled my life, piece by piece, so I would need hers. As smoke climbed the cabinets, she raised Malcolm's stolen screwdriver. Who would survive her final rescue? I threw the ceramic sugar jar at the wall alarm. It shattered and the building erupted in bells. Celia lunged. The screwdriver grazed Malcolm's ribs before he drove her into the pantry door. I crawled through broken glass, reached the deadbolt, and twisted. Celia caught my ankle and hissed that she had saved me from everyone. I kicked free and opened the door as officers charged upstairs. Her red cord snagged on the window latch and tore loose in 2 knots. This time, she couldn't explain it away. Celia pleaded guilty to aggravated arson, stalking, computer fraud, and attempted assault. Investigators linked her to Rebecca's disappearance through blood recovered from Rebecca's brass key. Celia later disclosed where she had buried her near Bellwether Lake. Malcolm's conviction was reviewed after evidence showed Celia had framed him during Rebecca's case, and the state vacated it. Lark and Finch restored my job and every stolen dollar. Daniel returned, but some things do not survive being expertly broken, do they? A year later, Malcolm mailed me Rebecca's favorite photograph: 2 siblings laughing beside Bellwether Lake before Celia entered their lives. I keep it in a drawer, not as a debt, but as proof that suspicion can be manufactured with terrifying precision. Outside the courthouse, I cut the red cord from my brass key and watched both knots fall apart. Forever was never a promise. It was a threat.